Well, hello, everybody.
Welcome back.
Yeah, so good to be here today. We're gonna do a little non-sexual quickie here. Uh, don't be alarmed. I am bleeding from the face. That's normal. That's natural. Just don't make a big deal about it, and it'll just probably stop on its own. It usually does. My name's Adam,
My
and I
name's
can
James, and
hear
I'm concerned about Adam's blood.
echo.
But I'm James, and I gave 100% to an intro that we weren't recording. So
I
I'm James, and I'm disappointed.
little
And with
behind the
us as
scenes.
never,
Oh,
First
Jordan.
time caller, long time watcher. None of those are true.
Absolutely.
psst, something about yourself.
I don't have to wear grippy socks anymore.
Nice.
That's excellent. What the hell are
That's a
drippy
win.
socks?
Grippy.
Socks.
Oh, grippy.
The socks
Is that because of the floors that you're around now, or?
It's because I'm a fall hazard.
Well, yeah. Well, great. I mean, that solves that.
You
They
can't
just have little rubberized dots on the bottom, so you don't fall in the asylum.
Yeah, dude.
usually
No,
get
I get it.
possible.
I do a lot of sock work. We had done a video recently about the 5 phases of Ken Wilber's work. So Ken Wilber is the author who's made up this integral theory. Integral theory is kind of the subject, like the meta subject of this channel. It's what we kind of apply to everything, or it's the thing we're talking about a lot of the time, and it's the language we're using, and that's all Ken Wilber. The message came back to us that if you look up Ken Wilber, one of the main things you'll read, one of the key insights that will come to you is that his work contradicts itself, or that he's changed his mind over the years. So we did a video explaining the 5 kind of phases of his work where he kind of shifted or pivoted direction and kind of explained those in a great deal of depth, and it was like an hour-long video. If you just have a cursory interest in what the difference is between Wilber 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I came up with, having watched that video, I came up with a pretty quick way to split it all up.
Idiot's
I'm
Guide to the 5 phases of Wilbur.
Yeah, just a quick, back of the envelope kind of method. And I was kind of surprised I didn't just kind of see it immediately, but when we talk about integral now in phase 5, in Wilber 5, we kind of distill the whole theory down to these 5 elements, aquilolatus, quadrants, levels, lines, types, and states. Those 5 phases correspond to the introduction of each of those 5 elements. So that's fairly straightforward. There's 5 elements, 5 phases. In Ken Wilber 1, his work, he was kind of a Jungian, and he was looking at states of consciousness. So I didn't really catch that, but it really is looking at states, and it's looking at states, transcendental states of consciousness, as a developmental process, but it's not levels yet. And we had kind of mentioned that. It's not like levels of growing up. It's talking about growing up as like a starting point to waking up. And then all of the work from there is about waking up in states of consciousness. That's Wilber 1, is states of consciousness. Wilber 2, he brings in levels of consciousness. So now you have 2 developmental vectors, becoming more mature, more complicated, updated to the times, and also states of consciousness, transcendence. So this would be phase 2 is levels. This is where he comes up with pre-trans fallacy. This is where there's a differentiation between the commonplace developmental process and the development of human abilities, capacities, and also the development of this specific one of spiritual attainment. So that still was not really articulated in perfect conjunction with contemporary psychology, academic psychology, mainstream clinicals, and positive psychology. So phase 3 is where he's going from being like a new age philosopher to a psychologist, or like a more academic style of thinker where the philosophy is being applied to a field. So phase 3 is lines. It's where you realize there's multiple developmental vectors. It's not a simple conglomerated process where you really can just say like levels go from levels to states, levels have only one line. It's a complicated process, and that brings us into alignment with contemporary psychology. Phase 4 brings in those quadrants. So it's like, okay, you have levels and lines. He kind of just realizes that these occur in self, culture, and nature, in the I, in the we, and in the it and its. That's where we see that plus, that graph, the axis with the quadrants, and each of the quadrants is going through levels on lines. And there's also kind of separate from that, or at the top of that, is states. Phase 4 is when he starts talking about it like this with Aquil, and because he's gone from, in phase 4, he's going from being psychology philosopher, New Age, to this new thing where it's trying to be this meta theory of everything. So I think phase 4 is where we would start calling this like a theory of everything that includes like all fields and sort of like meta philosophical. And then, as we said, phase 5 kind of arbitrarily introduces types because that makes it more comprehensive. So phase 5 is types. Phase 4 was quadrants. Bringing in types, it doesn't really do much to integral theory other than recognize the existence of other fields, recognize clinical diagnosis, recognize the male-female thing that's studied by a lot of people, recognizing differences in cultural and ethnic expressions, whatever types are under investigation. There's a galaxy of them. So with the introduction of types, aquilillatus, it is now considered a post-metaphysics, so like a meta-metaphysics, like a way of understanding reality with the understanding that it's impossible to understand reality. So it changes character, but each phase, each revision of Ken Wilber's work essentially just introduces formally one of these 5 integral elements that had been assumed before, but not expressly articulated in the work. And that is a quicker guide to the 5 phases of Ken Wilber's work.
I mean, what we found in the lab,
in the love laboratory,
each transition is just putting a finer point on it because it's assumed prior. You can't assume everyone has the same assumption. Of the 5, or not of the 5, all the 5, one word each one.
Oh yeah, states, levels, lines, quadrants, types. Yeah.
Got him.
And it's, like you're saying, I mean, quadrants were kind of assumed from the get-go. There was kind of a recognition of that, but it was not part of the explanation. It was not part of it. So, yeah. And
I mean, you guys, there's no doubt that there is you, there's your environment, there's how you see yourself in the environment. Like, well, you didn't say that.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Okay. Well, now you're contradicting yourself. Oh, no. No.
Yeah, and so this is with all the features. I mean, there was no point in Ken Wilber's work where he was like, I disagree with clinical diagnosis. There was no point where it's like, that's not part of the model. It wasn't included in the model as like a way to comprehend reality. Like, if you have schizophrenia, that will affect the way that you comprehend reality.
Might change things a little bit.
Might change the way you comprehend reality, as far as we understand.
It'll change your views on reality and change other people's reality views on you. So we got to say it out loud.
Saying it out loud is really important.
You're good enough. You're smart
enough. And some of us slump.
Some of us pump.
You might try to pump a little more.
Just a little.
So that's a quickie. That's one I've had just like sitting in. I like that occurred to me and I wrote it down.
That'll be a short, right?
Yeah. Quickie, I'm calling it. I'm thinking like 5-10 minutes. That's a quickie.
It's getting peppered over here.